Let's have a quick conversation about Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey. And I want to really talk to you about her success story and actually what you can learn from her podcast and actually grow your own podcast this year. Okay. Let's first talk about the podcast. So the podcast is called Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey. And she actually started this a few months earlier. So you were speaking about December 2013 or 2023. Okay. So what I love about Kylie Kelsey is that she is a natural storyteller. That's really fantastic. She's able to hold a conversation. She has a great magnetism. She's very intelligent and she's very creative too. Okay, so the cool thing is that for a lot of years she was the wife of NFL star. Okay, Kelsey, but the cool thing is that she's able to actually buttress her own creativity and actually come to the market with something very value adding. What I love about Kylie Kelsey is that her topics are very varied. You're never bored, and she's able to actually delve into any topic that she wants to focus on in a very creative way. I mean, that's what I love. I mean, she actually will touch several angles that nobody talks about, like basically things like modern parenting, social media trends, women in sports, and more. And sometimes she can actually cover those all those topics in the same show. That's really what's really good. And what I love about Kylie also is that Kylie Kelsey is that she's able to actually bring on board very interesting guests who have something to share with Kylie's audience. And what I love also is that basically she's constantly expanding her target audience. Okay, so if you think about Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey, you have a great mixture of creativity, of magnetism. I love that word because that's really what describes Kylie Kelsey. She's magnetic. She's able to have to hold a conversation and really engage her guests, but also the audience at the same time. So that's really fantastic. And she covers a lot of important topics around parenting. So that's really good because anytime you talk about parenting, you are automatically reaching out to men and women. I want to quickly talk to you about Kylie herself. So I spoke about the podcast. The podcast is called Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey. Now let's talk about Kylie Kelsey herself. So if you think about Kylie Kelsey, as I said a little earlier, she used to. She used to. Sorry. She's still the wife of. She's still Jason Kelsey's wife. Okay. She used to actually be like in the background for all those years when her husband was actually playing pro football. She was in the background supporting him, but also taking care of the family, right? And but since December, basically, Kylie actually is creating her own thing. I mean, what I love is that you have a woman who's very smart. I mean, she's very smart. She's very resourceful. Why am I saying that? Well, she's resourceful in the sense that in a span of a few months, she's able to set up an entire let's say operation around her podcast. That's creativity. That's resilience. That's resourcefulness, big time. Okay, and the lady herself, Kylie used to actually. She did a lot of things. Actually, she's originally from Philly. Okay, and this is because her husband used to play for the Eagles. Okay, I mean her husband actually retired a few months ago also. Okay, and basically she was in Philly with her husband and two kids. Okay, and what I want to say here is that with Kylie Kelsey, what I love is the fact that she's able to really, really also dedicate herself, commit herself to the Eagles Autism Foundation. That's just fantastic. I mean, this is why, among other things, her audience loves her, and the audience finds her personable. Her audience finds her relatable. Why? Because she's the real thing. Not only is she a very successful woman in her own right, she's able to dedicate herself to very noble philanthropic causes. Okay, I mean autism is something that I care about personally also. So anybody who really who's really involved in autism, I love that person. I mean that's just the little insert that I wanted to put here. But going back to her own her own life. Basically, she was involved in a few things here and there, but the not gonna lie with Kylie Kelsey is her first big things. Okay, first big things. I mean, it's one of those things where I mean, before she was in the background taking care of anything that's I mean everything she talks about in her podcast were things that she has been actually quote unquote nurturing, if you will, or let's say maybe thinking about for many years. Okay, you don't get to the level of success that she has seen very quickly without having some kind of preparation. So that's really fantastic. And you can see on the picture here, Kylie Kelsey being very happy. I love that picture. It's just fantastic with her fans. Really fantastic. So why why do people love Kylie Kelsey? I mean, not gonna lie, with Kylie Kelsey touches on a lot of topics. Parenting, mental health, but also self preservation. But the cool thing about Kylie Kelsey is that you have a very compelling host. That's right off the bat the number one reason why people love her. I mean, people like I said earlier, she's magnetic. People know she's the real thing. She's relatable. By the way, her husband also has a podcast. Okay, so her husband has a podcast with a fellow NFL player. So this is I'm not gonna say this is a family of podcasters, but the thing is that Kylie has a little bit of background when it comes to podcasting. I haven't seen her husband actually do his podcast, but Kylie herself, on the Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey, her personality is just very contagious, very contagious. Wonderful personality, and she's a hard worker. She's a hard worker, big time. Okay, I mean, we have during our investigations, we've heard reports about she working 8 hours, 10 hours a day, even though she's also a mother and she has other commitments. Okay, she's a husband, she's a wife, she has other things to care about. She's still a hard worker. So, and Kylie Kelsey also has invited on her show a lot of engaging guests. Okay, very knowledgeable to talk about stuff that she cares about. So that's why the audience loves her big time. You have a clear theme also for all her Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey episodes. Okay, you have a high production quality. I mean, at that level, of course, you're going to have a high production quality. I mean, her family is already well off anyway. So, I mean, the thing is that you also have the fact that she's consistently posting. Okay, since she actually came on the market like a few months ago, she has been consistent, and the public loves her for that. Okay, and she gives the audience the possibility to participate in podcasts too. So people love that a lot. Okay, and so accessibility is also one area where Kylie Kelsey is very good at. I mean, I've told you this before. She's relatable, and the audience loves her for that. Okay, she doesn't see herself as a star or whatever. No, even though she, having hundreds of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, having nearly 1 million, 1 million downloads on one platform in 1 or 2 months. That's really a strong feat. But Kylie Kelsey has remained very humble, and that's what people love her. People appreciate her relatability. Another reason why people actually love Kylie Kelsey is the fact that basically she's constantly building her brain. She's relatively new, so the Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey, as of the date of this show, is relatively new, but there has been strong branding so far in terms of scaling the business. What I love about Kylie Kelsey is that she's using some of the lessons learned while seeing her husband do his own podcast. By the way, the podcast is still around. I'm blanking on the exact name of the podcast, but it's a podcast about sports in general. Okay, and he's co-hosting that podcast. So, but the name will come back to me, and I'll just let you know. But the thing is that basically she actually is doing a lot of effective branding in terms of having a logo, a memorable name. Think about the name Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey. That's a great name. That's a great catchy name for a podcast. Okay, that tells you a lot already that you have a host who is open-minded, who is straightforward. Okay, and also, so she has done a lot in terms of cover art, in terms of intro music, and overall visual identity. The cool thing about Kylie Kelsey is that her the visual identity of her show reflect the theme and tone of the podcast, which is all about parenting, which is all about the intersection of sports and women. Let's say child rearing, for instance. Okay, self help, self preservation, and so on and so forth. And also, Kylie Kelsey is promoting her podcast strategically. How is she doing that? Well, by partnering with big names in the industry. Okay, you have big names in the industry, and also she knows whom to accept on her show also. And finally, she's done she or her team, she and her team have done a great job actually polishing their SEO strategy. I mean, this SEO strategy has helped her big time explode, really explode when it explode in terms of download numbers, in terms of listenership, big time since she actually came on the scene a few months ago, a few weeks or months ago, really. So when you think about Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey, let's talk about monetization. How Kylie monetizes her podcast? Well, she does a lot of stuff. First thing first, she has a podcast sponsorship. So she has a few sponsors that she's working with, okay, directly or indirectly, to make sure that her show is actually sustainable. Okay, that's really good. That's really good. I mean, she's able to have a relationship like sponsorship deals with big names in the industry. So that has helped her actually sustain her brand so far. So that's really fantastic. So podcast sponsorship has been the number one revenue, one of the top revenue sources for Kylie Kelsey. Next, you also have the her association with podcast monetization platforms. So you have a lot of them from Apple to Spotify to Amazon to Google Podcasts and what have you. So that's kind of cool. So basically, what happened here is that basically Kylie's podcast is available on as many platforms as possible. So you can see that you have a team behind, right? That's what I was telling you a little earlier. That basically all the lessons learned from her husband Jason. Her husband is called Jason. Her husband Jason's journey through podcasting. She is able to replicate those lessons in her own show. That's really fantastic. That tells you this is a smart person. Okay, and they also have a guest facing monetization. So depending on the guest that Kylie has on the show, they are able to negotiate a monetization model with the platform, with the directory, or with partners, with other partners. So that's kind of cool. And also, one thing I want to say here also is that Kylie is constantly looking for new ways to monetize her podcast because she knows that for her to actually be sustainable in the long run, for her to be scalable, she has to diversify her monetization avenues from just advertising and brand sponsorships. So that's kind of important. Also, when you think about Kylie Kelsey, what you will love also is that she has actually invested a lot in podcast merch. Now, her merch game at this point is not really big because again, she just came out like a few weeks or months ago, like 2 or 3 months ago. So she's trying to really build her business model big time. Maybe at some point she will rival the likes of Mel Robbins from the Mel Robbins show, or let's say Crime Junkie, let's say Britt and Ashley. So, but the thing is that when you think about merch with Kylie Kelsey, she's focusing right now on merch that is family friendly, like t-shirts or hats. Okay, maybe at some point she might do some mugs, whatever. But right now it's not really that solid yet. Her monetization strategy is not really solid yet. and but she's constantly working also with some big names in the industry to focus on account-based marketing. So her podcast right now, when you really analyze it, you can see that she's constantly trying to focus on account-based marketing to really give the kind of product that specific advertisers will love and really sell to those advertisers big time. Okay, and that has helped her pretty well. Like she has been able to attract big names in the industry when it comes to parenting, when it comes to self help, when it comes to self preservation, when it comes to sports, right? Because she's an athlete wife, if you will. Okay, so she's interested in sports. So basically, her strategy at this point is to cast a wider net when it comes to the type of sponsorships that she'll be interested in. And one thing I want to say also is that Kylie Kelsey understands that podcasting is a long term game. She understands that. She understands that pretty well, and that's why she's having an entire team. She's not the only one doing the stuff. I mean, she has a team behind her, and the team is making sure that she's getting the kind of a setup she needs to have in terms of gear, in terms of podcast gear, but also the kind of let's say podcast angle she needs to focus on things like branding, but also things like podcast frequency, if you will. If you think about Kylie Kelsey, what you can learn from her from her show so far is that if you are going to have a podcast and your podcast actually explodes overnight, you want to really pay attention to monetizing real fast. Okay, and what Kylie is doing, and what you should be doing also, is to repurpose your content into a book. That's really important because not everybody is willing to listen to a podcast, let's say audio. Some people are into reading. And Kylie currently has a team in place that's actually focused on transcribing her podcast and really turning those transcriptions in those transcripts, if you will, those transcripts into ebooks. So basically, there are a lot of people out there who will be interested in having content around self help, self preservation, parenting, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you want to repurpose your content into an ebook. And by the way, an ebook can be written or also audio. Okay, so you have a platform such as Audible from Amazon that can really have an audiobook also. So and Kylie Kelsey's team is working on that as well. So it's not just about written content; it's also audio content. And one thing that Kylie Kelsey does pretty well is to syndicate her content to YouTube. Okay, basically, of course, she is on podcast directories, but she also knows that YouTube can be a great source of revenue for her. So if you go on YouTube, you can see her content. She's on YouTube big time, and she's been on YouTube since day one. As a matter of fact, it's on YouTube that she actually blew up. I mean, she created her YouTube account in November. Okay, and a few weeks later, she has already amassed so many followers. So that's really fantastic. It tells you about the strategy that she has in place. And the third thing you want to do here is that you want to really be promoting your podcast like crazy, and that's something that Kylie Kelsey does pretty well. You have to keep promoting over and over and over. So, in conclusion to this conversation, I spoke to you about Not Gonna Lie with Kylie Kelsey. What makes this woman so successful, so wonderful, so charismatic, so magnetic? And I talked about the podcast, Kylie herself, what makes people love Kylie, and how Kylie is able to monetize her podcast. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.